Welcome to Design to Move, a weekly functional movement series reviewing common movement impairment syndromes, muscle imbalances, and injury cycles and how to correct for them. Don't just exercise, but restore optimal movement.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Design to Move. My name is Ryan Maxwell, this is Ryan Parr. Today we're going to go over another movement distortion, and this one has to do with what's called sway back posture. Essentially it means that the flexors of the hips are too tight and it's pulling your pelvis downward or lordotically, and it shifts your center of mass forward from a vertical center of mass. Now there's different combinations of this. Sometimes one side is more dominant than the other. Today we're going to take a very general approach to this and show you how to address some of the common issues. The muscles that we're going to talk about for tension are the TFL or tensor fasciae lata muscle, and also we're going to get into the latissimus muscles, show you the combination of how the upper body ties into the lower body and how it could lead to, again, altered breathing mechanics, shoulder placement, and then ultimately the placement of your pelvis. So just as usual, we do have a blog on the topic. It's in the description below. Make sure to read up on that. If you want more information on today's topic, or if you want a free virtual movement assessment, we'd love to hear from you. So you can reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. And again, we do have a table of contents to the side. You can notice here, all of the segments of our videos are going to be timestamped with a condensed version of it at the bottom. So if you just want to use this as a review or a general tutorial, you can use that at the bottom. On that note, we have a lot to cover today, so let's get right into sway back. This is our mobility and release segment for our video. Here's where we show you how to reduce the overactive muscles in your body. Today we're going to target the tensor fasciae lata, it's a superficial flexor muscle, as well as the latissimus dorsi, the upper arm extensor muscles. Let's get right to it. First muscle we're going to hit is the tensor fasciae lata. This is the little superficial hip flexor that attaches your hip bone down to your IT band that travels down into your tibia. Now again, if the hips are tipped downward, that muscle starts to get compressed. But if we have a sway back posture, not only is it tipped down, but we shift our center of mass forward and start to stack on our hips. What that does is actually starts to pull our femurs open, and that kind of twists that TFL muscle, so it makes it overused, overactive. So it has a tendency to be pretty engaged on at least one hemisphere of the pelvis. So today we're going to show you how to use a lacrosse ball to reduce it. Again, it's going to be right under your hip bone, about an inch, and offset medially, or rather laterally to the side, about an inch. And it's going to reside between your hip bone and the trochanter of your femur, that little elbow. So if you rotate your femur in and out, you'll feel the elbow of the femur off to the side. It's going to sit in that little pocket. Another way to identify it is if you lift your leg up, bring the leg out, and then rotate it in, you'll feel that muscle flex, and then you know you're right on it. So Ryan's going to lay sideline on his left side, placing that ball right there. He's approaching the ball. It can be a sensitive muscle, and with that little lacrosse ball being so acute, too much pounds per square inch, that thing's going to guard. So we're going to approach that muscle softly. So he's going to roll into it, making sure not to put too much pressure into the ball. Now once he's on top of the ball, he's going to take his opposite leg and bring it up into flexion, and then just kind of hold his hip line there. Now remember, the goal for this release is to put pressure into the muscle until the muscle wants to relax. And then once it softens initially, you're going to start to move the joint that it attaches to and start to elongate the muscle. This is called a pin and stretch technique. We want to make sure that throughout this process, we have the capacity to engage the muscle that opposes that TFL, and in this case, it would be the gluteals. So what he's going to do is, as he kicks his leg back, he's going to breathe in, he's going to extend his leg up off the table, or adduct the leg up off the table, and extend his leg back behind him. Now you may not be able to see it from this angle, but he's engaging his glute back here. So he's on the pressure of the ball, and that's compressing the muscle. Now as he brings his leg back, he's going to stretch that muscle. If the muscle becomes overstretched, it's going to want to flex back and guard. And when that happens, the opposing muscle on the opposite side of the joint is going to relax, and that would be his glute. So that's a good indication that if he pulls his leg back too far and the glute on the same hemisphere isn't able to contract, well then you know you've gone too far in that stretch. So use that as your indicator as you go back and forth through extension and flexion. Once again, he's going to breathe in, kick the leg back behind him into extension, make sure he can keep that left gluteal engaged. He's going to keep his obliques tight on the opposite side, the external obliques on his right side, and then he's going to kick back and let it relax. Go through about 6 to 10 series of that lengthening relationship, and you'll notice each time that you come back into flexion on the left hip, you'll be able to sink into that ball and get deeper and deeper into the muscle belly. So the second muscle that we're going to target is the latissimus dorsi. These are muscles that pull the arms into extension and internal rotation. When they're tight, they do contribute to internally rotated humerus, but they also add to hyperextension in the lower back. And while we're addressing this today with the sway back posture, normally sway back posture, you're going to see the hips shift forward, the thoracic spine go backward, and oftentimes you'll see the shoulders rotate inward. Now, if that happens, again, it's going to alter the shoulder blade positioning, the humeral positioning, and can lead to acromial impingement. So we want to reduce this for the shoulder health, but also for the reestablishing of the neutral alignment for the pelvis. Okay, so Ryan's going to do that today by using a foam roller. He's going to rotate on his thorax towards the roller, but he's going to offset the roller behind him. That way he has clearance for his arm to come up and down. Now, again, the arm would go up into flexion to stretch the lat. And when he does that, he's going to bring the arm up, he's going to internally rotate the humerus, and he's going to draw it up into flexion and bring it up closer towards his temple. As he does that, it's going to make the back want to go into extension, because if it's too tight and he's compressing it by sliding it under the pressure of the roller, it might make the back start to arch. So we want to avoid that. So he's going to breathe in as he lifts the arm up, and then he's going to relax, breathe out, and bring the arm back down towards his hip. Now we can go through multiple sequences of this. The arm would be up into flexion. As the arm comes up, he's going to clench his glute on the same side. He's on the left side. Then you can see how these relationships play into that TFL relationship. Okay, he would be in mid-stance phase of gait. His glute would contract. His arm would go up in front of him as his body goes forward into that gait or ambulation. So he's putting the weight into his glute and he's drawing his leg up. So he's flexing the glute on the left, breathing in, lifting the arm up, supinating the palm so it's facing up, and then breathing out, and then sinking into the belly muscle. Ultimately, you should feel the muscle soften as it goes back into passive. So when the muscle comes back, it's neither flexed nor stretched, it's passive. You should be able to penetrate into that muscle every iteration of that breathing pattern. So we look for about 6 to 10, do both sides of the body, and that would take us through our mobility. This is our activation segment for today's video. Here's where we show you how to engage the traditionally underactive or discontinuous muscles in the body. For today, we're going to get into the rib cage and how we can get the diaphragm under control in relationship to intra-abdominal pressure. This does have an impact on sway back, so we're going to show you how to engage your abdominals with breathing pattern. The muscles that we're going to target are the abdominal muscles. We have our transverse abdominis, we have a rectus abdominis, we have an internal and external oblique. All of these muscles compress the spine into flexion. When we have hyperextension in the back or lordosis or sway back where the hips shift forward, oftentimes our abdominals are all inhibited. So what it means is our abs contain our ribs down, they pull the rib cage down, and it holds the rib line so that our diaphragm has a nice strong anchor point so it can depress and pull air into our lungs. Well, the problem is if our hips are tipped, a lot of times our diaphragm is hyperascended and we don't get the abdominal pressure to support our rib cage, nor our spine and pelvis. So what we want to do is engage our abdominals while working against the pressure of the intrathoracic pressure by breathing in. So what Ryan's going to do is he's going to lay flat in a supine position. His legs are inside his hip line. He's going to breathe all the air out of his lungs, and by doing so, his lower back should come in contact with the mat. His ribs are going to depress. So you'll see his xiphoid and his 5th through 12th rib come into depression, and then he's going to breathe in and try to maintain the pressure of his abdominals. The act of breathing is actually going to stretch through his abdominals and actually increase that intra-abdominal pressure. If he keeps his abs on, though, you'll notice that his hip bones actually go upward, they ascend. So it's actually pulling the pelvis under and helping to hold his pelvis neutral, okay? Now if he lets go of the abdominal pressure, and just show him, right? The ribs lift up, the pelvis tips down, and he goes into extension into the spine. And if we stacked him on his feet, his hips would shift forward and we would see it as a sway back posture. So that's what we're working on. So he's gonna make sure, and he's gonna try at least, that when he breathes the air out, that his shoulders don't rotate forward and towards the midline of the body. So he's gonna retract the scapula back and try to hold that shoulder blade position in a nice neutral position as well. So what you guys can do to help practice the breathing pattern against the flexion and extension of the hip, as you breathe out and get all the air out of your ribs, try to do a Kegel or a pelvic floor contracture. And as you breathe in, maintaining the abdominal pressure, not letting the ribs go, you're gonna breathe in and clench your glutes. Remember, when the glutes are contracted, it would normally be a nutated position in the pelvis, meaning you would be in weight or again compressed. the back is going to extend. We want to work with those mechanics. So again, gluteal contracture against breathing in while maintaining intra-abdominal pressure helps to create a neutral core alignment. Okay, we'd like to do this with a 2-count breath in to a 6-count breath out. You're going to do that for about 10 to 15 cycles. Give yourself a minute of time to recover, and then we'll do it again. And then your abs should be nice and charged up. You should learn how to contain your diaphragm. You'll increase the intrathoracic pressure. You'll be able to get more excursion out of the backside of your ribs, and it'll help to align your neck and shoulders in a more appropriate way as well. And that's it for activation. This is our integration segment for today's video. Here's where we show you how to engage multiple sets of muscles in a way that facilitates clean and anatomically correct movement. We're going to show you how to use a single leg balance position to help to stabilize the shoulder mechanics against your rib positioning so that all of your force couple or sling systems help to stabilize your pelvis, knee, and ribs. Let's go right to it. So now we're going to get into integration where we're going to target a single leg balance position. Essentially what we want to do is coordinate the upper body musculature with the lower body musculature so we can work the movers of the arm with the scapular stabilizers and the lumbopelvic hip stabilizers. Basically what this means is the adjoining segments like the pelvis and the shoulder blade that attach the arm to the ribs or the femur to the spine are actually going to be stable enough to be able to move through space without seeing accessory motion. So Ryan's going to do that with a band. And now that we've reduced the lat, we can see about getting that shoulder blade back into a nice fixed position without excess internal rotation of the humerus. So he's going to balance on his left leg. He's going to stabilize his pelvis by engaging his glute, keeping a nice firm dome of his left foot. He's going to lift his opposite leg up into flexion. As he does that, he's going to engage his groin on the right side, his internal oblique on the right side, pulling the rib cage down. And then he's going to internally and inferiorly depress the left rib cage down by engaging his external oblique. That sets up his posture for his spine. After he does that, he's going to retract the shoulder blade down and back on the right side and then pull his arm back behind him into extension, but he's going to externally rotate through the humerus by pulling the elbow again back externally or the wrist back externally. You'll notice that Ryan's collarbone is nice and neutral. He's able to keep his hip line neutral on the left side, so his hip bone's not rotated posteriorly or backward, and he's holding his head right in line with his sternum. Now he's gonna again breathe out slowly and let that body unravel, letting his rib cage drift back on the left side externally and his pelvis let go externally at the same time. So he's gonna do that again, dome the foot, clench the glute, stabilize the pelvis, retract the shoulder, depress the shoulder, rotate through the ribs, pull the arm back, push through, get nice internal tension of the oblique on the left side, dropping that left shoulder, dropping that right shoulder, holding his ribs, and then breathing out slowly, slowly, stretching that diaphragm and engaging his abdominals like we did on our activation. So he did a great example. Now remember, as we're doing this, we don't want the braced leg to kick back. So as we're standing here and we can't stabilize the pelvis because the glute's inhibited, well, the hip's gonna rotate back. That's gonna impact the positioning of the ribs and by extension, the positioning of the shoulder on that opposite hemisphere. So we wanna make sure that the rib line is neutral, the hips are neutral, and that we've got a nice stable hip without any varus or excessive valgus of the femur, or excuse me, the knee or the hip. So with that in mind, you're gonna do about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. If you fatigue, make sure to stop. Make sure to coordinate the breath. Remember, it's a breath in on the retraction, a breath out on the extension. And if you have any questions, remember, reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. 2 sets of 20 with a minute of time in between each side. Our final segment is strength. Here's where we show you how to overload certain muscles to help to maintain the stability of a particular joint by increasing its rigidity or passive tone. Today we're going to show you how to engage your abdominals and your gluteals to help maintain a neutral pelvic alignment so that you can again reduce that sway back posture. Let's get to it. So our last movement is going to be a hip press, commonly referred to as a bridge, with abdominal pressure. So what we're trying to do here is engage your gluteals, your hamstrings, and your abdominals all in one motion to try to keep the pelvis from tipping anteriorly, creating that excess extension into the lower back. So what we want, again, is Ryan to engage his abdominals by supporting his head first. He's going to draw his arms back, We have a tendency to compensate by using the arm or the pectoral girdle. Try to lift the arms up, create momentum. A lot of times you'll kick forward through your cervical flexors, like your scalenes and sternos, the accessory respiratory muscles. Don't do that. We want to support the neck, so you're going to pull your head back into extension or neck into extension, cranial glide, tuck your chin. You're going to support the bridge or the rim of your cranium or skull on your fingertips, and you're going to draw your arms back. So that'll set up the neck and the head. Now he's going to get all the air out of his ribs by engaging his diaphragm, active, or not diaphragm, but internal, external oblique, and abdominals, transverse abdominis, holding that abdominal pressure, and then he's going to lift his body weight off the ground through the torso, trying not to lead through the head or the neck. Okay, so now he's got isometric pressure through his abdominals. With that, he's going to plant his heels into the ground, push down into the floor and almost away, and then he's going to lift his hips so that his right and left hip bones are even to each other, and then come down slowly, breathing out to a count of 6. 4 down, and then he's going to hold that position at the bottom for 2 seconds. He's not resting, he's just holding. And he's going to breathe in, press up, making sure that both the right and left hip bones are equal. If one drops down like so, normally means that the glute's not strong enough, so he's got to push down harder on the glute or the heel, contract his glute, and then come down. Now again, if you guys are doing this and you notice that it's really hard for you to support that as you come up, a lot of times the glutes are inhibited by the extra tension in the flexors. We talked about that. That's the whole reason why we have this little sway back thing going on. So what we want to make sure of is we only lift as high as we can while maintaining, again, balance or again, equilibrium between the right and left hip bones. Okay, so again, it'd be up for 2. Get up as high as you can while maintaining that nice neutral line, and then breathe out for a count of 6, 4 down, and 2 at the bottom with a pause. And if you do it right, your abs and your glutes are going to be on fire. Okay, so you want to take some time, make sure that you're doing the right thing. If you notice that your head starts to again extend, so it starts to kick back, or again, your neck starts to crane forward, if your shoulders start to dump in, if there's an asymmetry in the hips. Right? All of these are indicators that your body's fatigued, you don't have control over your natural symmetries, and you would want to reduce this and stop. Okay, so make sure to work up to about 20 repetitions with that 2 count up, 4 second down, 2 second pause, get up to 15, 20 reps, give yourself a minute in between, and in no time you'll notice that your vertical center of mass starts to clean up and you'll start to reduce that sway back posture. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Design to Move, this one on sway back posture. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember, a lot of us have overused hip flexors, quads, and calf muscles, and due to which our pelvis has a tendency to tip forward. That's called lordosis, and this actually creates more pressure on our lower back. By extension, our rib cage starts to elevate, we start to have issues with our breathing patterns, and then that impacts our cranial positioning, our head positioning on our spine, and our shoulder positioning. So oftentimes the instability of the pelvis leads to global distortion patterns all throughout the body. Pretty important that we get that under control. So if you have more questions on today's topic or you want more specific information on your own particular body, reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com, and we would love to offer you a free virtual assessment. Remember, we do have a blog on the topic, so make sure to read up on that, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Design to Move. Remember, your body's designed to stay in motion, so stay with it.